Welcome to the Midweek Mailbag. Our midweek podcast is back where we are answering your Detroit Lions questions live here on twitch.tv/Pride of Detroit or youtube.com/at Pride of Detroit. Of course, you can always just listen to us on the podcast feed as well. That works. We don't care. You can listen to us, do whatever you want. It's free country. My name is Jeremy Reisman, by the way. I'm the producer over at Pride of Detroit in a secret location for you live audience. Don't try to track me down. But with me, as always, to bring some sanity, because I'm flustered in this new location, hopefully live from his settled position in the garage, is the machine, is the managing editor, is at Erik Schlitt on Twitter. Erik Schlitt. Erik, how we doing, buddy?
Hey bud, I hope it's nice and warm where you are, wherever it is. It looks warm since you're in a t-shirt and inside.
Don't
So
give the
I don't
people
know.
hints here.
I mean, maybe not. Maybe it's not.
Well, I just hope everything technology-wise is working well, but anyways, it's been a couple weeks. The Lions have had irregular schedules. We've had irregular schedules. We wanted to get in some questions here because listen, we've gone through the rough part of the year. We're about to head into a very exciting part of the year, where the Lions are on the verge of clinching their first division in 30 years, on the verge of clinching a playoff as early as this Thursday. So let's get to some questions here and see what's on everyone's mind. And there's a lot, but let's start here with Alan Hemming, who asks, "What was the best thing about the Broncos game that is sustainable heading into the Vikings game?"
Um, I think there's a lot of things that are sustainable, and I think there's a lot of things that you can look at and say, this looks like something they can continue to do. But the most obvious one, I believe, is just the rookie production is something that's been there all year, should be there. There does not really appear to be much of a rookie wall for this class. Most of them are operating at their peak and actually getting better, which is kind of scary. And so I think the production from the rookies is something that's going to continue, and as we saw against the Broncos, could be the difference you know, in the game.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of the sustainable stuff is the stuff we've been seeing all season. Like you said, it's the rookies, it's the offensive production, it's the offensive line being dominant, and none of that is particularly revelatory, right? I think everyone believes in the offensive line. I think everyone believes in the offense. I think people believe in Gibbs and Laporta and Amon Ra.
Sure.
The question is, for me at least, is what about the defensive performance do you think is sustainable? Is
Okay.
anything, because that was a huge step in the right direction. Obviously, you hold the Broncos scoreless in the first half. They score some late touchdowns. I don't think there's any major concerns about anything that happened in the second half outside of maybe them going the distance on the very first drive. But to me, that's at least a little bit more of an interesting question. You know, what defensively is sustainable from that game? And it's hard to say anything definitively, particularly in the secondary when you have Kendall Vildor, when you have Ifatu Melifanu, these guys that haven't proved it over a long period of time, but definitely had promising performances against the Broncos. So I don't know. Is there anything, I guess, in the secondary that you feel is like, yeah, that was the Lions for real. That wasn't just, we'll see if that sort of performance can continue.
If you're talking secondary specifically,
Yeah.
I would say the light bulb that Iffy turned on, the plays that he made,
Yeah.
and the volume of plays that he made was very eye-opening for me, right? Because like he was making plays that they were almost like veteran like.
Yeah.
And like when they're in cover two and the ball goes deep in the center and he runs over and almost hesitates
Yeah.
to wait for the ball to get there, then jumps and punches it out with like that's a savvy move by a guy. And so like if he had a couple of those, you'd be like, all right, but he had like 6 or 8 plays that were like, wow, okay, that's really good. And so it seems like that light bulb turned on.
Yeah.
And that can happen with these guys sometimes, especially third year guys, right?
Yeah.
And so
Derek Barnes.
in the secondary, I think Iffy could be a guy that they're going to lean on down the stretch. And at 6'3", 0.05 and runs a 4.4. There's a lot of different things you can do with him, even when the CJ Gardner Johnson returns. And so there, I do like that in the secondary. I do have another one that I'll want to talk to in a second about on the defense that I think can improve, but I want you to respond to Iffy first.
Well, we're going to get more into Iffy, so I'd rather
Oh,
you
well,
just
all
jump
right,
in.
I'll just talk then.
Yeah.
All right.
Just jump. I'll just sit here and watch.
Okay.
Look pretty.
I think the other thing was Hutchinson and he never got overextended, right? That's something that we saw during those stretches was he was reaching, he was trying too hard, and he was very within himself, yet still using his athleticism to make plays. He played contained perfectly. Those are things that we saw happen in the last 2 games of the season last year. They were missing over the last 4 or maybe 5, and that seemed to come back. And so if that switches again for him, I think that he's shown that he can do something like that. And if he can do it again moving forward, that changes how they guard against or defend against mobile quarterbacks like crazy. Because if he can shut down one side, which is what we saw last year, where he shuts down one side, everybody else just focuses on the other side, and it's a lot easier because the real estate for the mobile quarterback to move is not as much.
Yeah.
He did that against Russ. Now Russ is not, Justin Fields or anything like that, but Russ ran the ball a few times and Hutch was waiting on him, and he played within himself and he played within his role. And so that is a key domino to fall in defending mobile quarterbacks. And so I think that's something that if that switch stays with him, that's a sustainable thing that can help them moving forward.
That would be something, because I think that's this defense's biggest bugaboo, and certainly Lions fans' biggest frustration with the defense is their inability to stop mobile quarterbacks. And you're right, like Russell Wilson isn't a guy that really likes to run a lot. Although the Broncos were kind of recently leaning into some more zone read stuff that is designed for him to keep the ball. But Hutchinson did a pretty good job there. I don't really have any more of an answer on the defense. I'm still very much kind of in wait and see mode here. I thought Alex Anzalone mostly had a good game, and again, that's not surprising. He's been that way all season. So I think in general that sort of stuff has been consistent and good. But let's go back to the secondary, because we got a lot of questions about Iffy and CJ Gardner Johnson coming back and what all that means. So let's jump into the next question from @BeatLions, the Lions beat writer replier guy, asks, is there a way to have Iffy, Kirby, Branch, and CJGJ all starting / playing significant snaps? Iffy at outside cornerback with opposite Cameron Sutton, ?
I don't think he's an outside corner anymore in the Lions' eyes. If they would have switched him back sooner, because the need was at corner previously, and they never did. And they like him in this role. In my opinion, if he has a lot of CJ Gardner Johnson in him, a lot more than what I thought, like the ability to play coverage, the ability to drop into the slot, drop into the box, play the run, cover a line, the tight ends out of the, like, there's a lot of what I saw from Iffy against the Broncos. It looked a lot like Gardner Johnson, where I was like, holy cow. And so, but guys like Gardner Johnson, and if he has the range that we saw last week, and Branch, boy, you can do a lot of things with those guys. Now, you probably can't start all of them and Kirby, right? Because then you're basically like in dime.
Right.
But if you are willing to sacrifice a linebacker, like a off-the-ball linebacker, for one of these guys, then it's possible. Yeah. Now, you may do that situationally, mobile quarterback, maybe you want to get a better athleticism matchup, second and long, like if they get a holding penalty on something on first down, like you may go to that set. I don't think it's a starting set, but I think there's enough snaps there with these guys that are versatile that you can find significant roles for all of them. Now, I also don't think Gardner Johnson is going to get rushed back, so I think they're going to take it slow with him. And I also think if he still needs to show more consistency than the 2 games. So he's looked good in 2 games, right? And that's great. And he's earned that role, obviously. So there's a couple variables, but if they are your best guys, like I think there's opportunities. Like if you want Branch to be a nickel, one of these guys can be your nickel linebacker. Like there's a lot of different variations, and that's the beauty of having position versatile players is that you can run a whole variety of defenses with them at your disposal.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to keep in mind. One is with Iffy. He'll be the first to tell you he is still learning the position. So once CJ Gardner-Johnson is ready, that's his job. Iffy is going to a rotational role at that point. He's not going to be a starter at that point. They still, like you said, they're probably going to find ways to get him out there, because if there's one thing that I think I've learned about Iffy over the past couple weeks is that the Lions actually wanted to play him earlier. It was the hand injury. He's out there in a club. You probably don't want your safety out there trying to pick balls off with one hand and things like that. So I think they very much do believe in Iffy as a potential starter in the future. But when you have Gardner-Johnson, when you have Kirby Joseph, when you have Brian Branch, it's going to be tough out there for him. It's going to be tough for him to find a spot. But at the same time, he's making the most of his opportunities right now, and that's going to turn some heads, and that's going to tell the team that he's a gamer, that he's what they've maybe been hoping he was going to be. Maybe not since he was drafted, since they viewed him as an outside corner at the time, but he's developed into that. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, if you go back to training camp, we didn't see a lot of 3 linebacker looks in training camp. That wasn't kind of what their initial idea of what the defense was. We've seen more of it since then because they've had to adjust to their personnel. They've had to adjust to losing CJ Gardner-Johnson. They've had to adjust to Iffy being injured for most of the season. We're deep in the season now that you don't want to change too much, obviously, of what you do. But at the same time, as you get healthier, you want to play your players at their best position. So I do think, like you said, that they're going to find ways, sub packages, to get all these guys out there if they can. But I don't think. I think when CJ Gardner comes back, it is Iffy who takes the biggest step back. I don't think they're going to pull Kirby. I don't think they're going to pull Brian Branch. I think it's Iffy that's going to have to go from 90, 80, 99% of the snaps back to like 40, 30. Fair?
Yep.
Okay. Swag Kazakage on Twitter asks, with CJGJ back, do you think they will free Branch to blitz more? Branch has been a pivotal in coverage, but with CJGJ back there, maybe he can send home more.
Yeah, I think they discovered that they can blitz their defensive backs last week.
Yeah,
and so
they sure did.
That's I think that is very much open.
Yeah.
And Branch is actually very good blitzer. At Alabama, he was lethal off that edge there. So Branch, Melifonwu, absolutely, those guys come in and find ways to blitz and bring heat. Yeah, I absolutely think even without bringing Gardner-Johnson back,
right,
I still think the opportunity is there.
They did it a little bit last week, right?
Yeah, right.
It was obviously more with Iffy, and Iffy was certainly maybe more of the explosive one in terms of getting home, in terms of getting quarterback hits, obviously forcing the fumble. But I think they're both.
But they blitzed Vildor too,
right?
Like off the out of the
they had
straight
a 2
corner,
outside
right?
corner blitz where they Vildor and Cameron Sutton at the same time. So, and Dan Campbell said after the game, I think referring to those plays like that was a new wrinkle that we added that caught them off guard. And so, is it a new wrinkle that will continue to be a new wrinkle? It certainly won't. It's not going to catch Minnesota as much off guard as it caught Denver off guard, but it was also successful. And I think you saw some of the athleticism of those players pay off. And so, Minnesota might be more ready for it, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be able to stop it.
It's interesting because that duo blitz is something that Denver did a lot.
Right.
And so I do find it curious that they introduced it against Denver, who does it. And so I wonder if they're like watching film and saying, geez, this is good. I wonder if, we could introduce that type of thing. And, I know it takes a while for plays to be installed and stuff like that. But at the same time, if it's a play, you can install that in a week. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that makes me curious about this upcoming game,
right,
where they blitz an insane amount in a variety of different ways. And I wonder if they'll find anything in the Vikings approach and say, why don't we throw this right back at them
Yeah.
and try and catch them off guard?
Well, that leads in nicely to a next question from
Yeah.
JC Spadoni, who asks, question for you and Eric. Which team have the Lions played already that has a similar defense to the Vikings, and how did the Lions react? So my question, I kind of want to jump off this, and because we're coming off a game against the Broncos where they do send a bunch of kind of disguised various blitzes, would you say that's the answer?
Honestly, yeah,
Yeah.
because the Broncos blitzed the seventh most in the NFL, which was like at like 37% or something like that.
Yeah.
The Vikings blitz most, and they're like at
42 or
40.
43 or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
so it's more,
Yeah.
but it's not this like huge chasm.
Right.
Like we looked at that one stat. You've seen that graph that was out where they're like, Brian Flores' defense and the Vikings are like way up in the corner.
Right.
They're like dropping 8 into coverage versus blitzing, right? And he's like way off in the corner.
Yeah.
They blitz a ton, but there's still a lot of other teams that blitz, and the Broncos are one of them. And the Broncos use a lot of variations of blitzes.
Right.
They'll blitz both linebackers in the A gaps. They'll blitz the linebacker and a corner. They'll blitz both corners. They'll blitz a corner and a nickel. Like they have a whole variety of things, and the Lions handled that.
They did.
Okay, like they handled it, and so I think that's very encouraging going in, because you look at this starting OL plus Sam Laporta
Right.
and their ability to pick up those blitzes, because Montgomery's a terrific blitz picker upper, right?
Yeah.
And so I think having the Broncos right before the Vikings is a huge benefit
Yeah.
for the Lions, because they are already kind of in that mode. And so I don't know if there's another team that's higher or uses more frequency than the Broncos that the Lions have played, but I don't think there is. So I'd say the Broncos is the most comparable.
Yeah, and I'm actually writing about this in the Pride of Detroit Direct newsletter. The way I compared it, though, is like you're test driving a Honda Civic in preparation for a Ferrari, because what the Vikings are doing is unlike anything that anyone else in the NFL is doing it. And Dan Campbell said as much to begin the week, because like you said, it's not just the fact that their blitz rate is, ridiculous compared to everyone else, but it's the fact that their drop 8 rate is also way higher than everyone. So when they crowd, 8 guys to the line, you don't know if they're going to send 6, 7, 8, or if they're only going to send 3. And that's, I think, the difference, because while the Broncos definitely disguised some blitzes, it wasn't like there were 8 guys at the line every single snap like it almost is with the Vikings. It was just kind of pure insanity. And then the other difference too here is that the Lions were able to run the ball. The Broncos did not have a good run defense. Vikings do. And so that's going to be the additional challenge is getting into those third and manageables against the Vikings. Because if you get into a third and long against the Vikings, they're going to put Jared Goff in a whirlwind with everything that they try to do. So, I'm with you, though. Like, I'm very much encouraged by how the offensive line, I think I turned to you during the game at some point and be like, these blitzes are just not working. It seems like every single time the Lions exactly know where it's coming from, or at least prepared for anything. And the way they passed off players, the way that, like you said, the running backs picked up blitzers, it was poetry, man. It was honestly fantastic.
So I'm going to sneak peek you on some of my research that I've done that I'm prepping for my keys to victory. Okay.
We're teasing everything here.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'll give you a little bit. Because they'll blitz, they also become susceptible to easy dumps and stuff like that. Right.
Yeah.
So they are allowing teams to complete 69.6% of their passes. That is last in the NFL. They are dead last. So if you have a team that has explosive playmakers that can catch the ball near the line of scrimmage and then get yak, you can eat on this defense. Okay. St. Brown, Laporta, Gibbs. These are all guys that are going to be problematic for the Vikings. So when you look at DVOA against tight ends, they're 18th. When you look at how they are against passing to running backs, they're 18th. But where they get gashed is over the middle of the field, where they're 23rd. And so again, when you have a team that gives up a lot of completion percentages and to these easy, quick weapons, and you give it up over the middle of the field, this feeds into what this offense does well. And so there's opportunities to kind of nickel and dime this defense. And once you get that confidence and look, Jared Goff is playing with a ton of confidence. And if he's willing to sit and he's willing to trust his line, because he had huge pockets against the Broncos.
Yep.
If he's willing to sit and wait and able to do that, there's yards for the taking.
I think we'll go to break on that very optimistic note. When we come back, more of your Lions questions, more of our answers right here on the Midweek Mailbag. We'll be right back. All right. There's no off-screen, off-air screen.
I probably should have mentioned Jared Goff's completion percentage, 67.1, seventh best in the NFL. So you have a top 7 quarterback in completion percentage and the worst defense in allowing completion. So there's some fun opportunities in that stat.
Absolutely. All right. I'm trying to pull up some alerts because I know we had a bunch of alerts come up here. I don't have the best method of checking alerts at the moment, but hey, everybody, see all activity. I'm gonna have to go somehow see the YouTube alert because if I'm not mistaken, I think someone gave us $50 over on YouTube.
Whoa!
I looked over. I'm like, does that say $49.99? So whoever that was, I'll look. Unfortunately, the janky setup I have right now does not have YouTube pulled up. But I will thank all of our Twitch subscribers here. I do have an activity list for that, so let me do that real quick. Okay. LJ B Rough, 49 months subscribed to the channel, over 4 years now. That is insane. LJ says, "Just win, baby." That's right. Woodchuck under 100 bits. Oh, I somehow got scrolled down. Hold on. Where did your bits go? Let me find your bits. There it is.
Tampa, Detroit Lion.
Detroit Lion. $50 donation?
That is, yeah, $49.99.
That's crazy, very man. Kind. Thank you so much. Did he say something? Can you see?
He said, "Yep, that's right." He said, "POD has the best Lions coverage in the business. Happy holidays to Erik and Jeremy, and go Lions."
I appreciate that, man. That's super nice. And
very nice.
I'm so sorry that we don't give as much attention to YouTube as we do Twitch. We're still working out the balance here. We love our Twitch audience. We love our YouTube audience. We're just getting to know our YouTubers. So appreciate that. That's very, very generous of you.
Very, very kind. Yes, very.
Woodchuck Hunter, by the way, said Wednesday night main show. Let's go. Yeah, fine. Dreskel, thank you for the 16-month subscribe to the channel. Yevitz, 31 months subscribed to the channel. Justin Singer, 27 months subscribed channel, says can't wait to clinch the division. It's coming. Hackdis followed us and then subscribed to us. Appreciate you. Welcome to the Twitch page. Enjoy your ad-free experience. Lion Sufferer was just I guess I get alerts for every time you're watching 3 times in a row. Thank you, Lion Sufferer. Says awesome being home for this instead of at work. Yeah. We get to we're in prime time. The Lions are always in prime time now. They're undefeated in prime time.
5-0.
Maybe we're undefeated in prime time. I don't know. You guys are going to have to tell us after the show whether we won this stream or not. Dr. Dunlap, 17 months subscribed to the channel. D Terp, 29 months subscribed to the channel, says, in your opinion, will Laporta beat Mike Ditka's record? And then for some reason it just says, and if he, and I don't get the rest of the message. So,
is it Ditka's touchdown record? Is that what he saw? Because that's 12. If I'm not
he only
mistaken.
needs 3 to tie it, 4 to win it, which I think is very doable.
Yeah.
I think he needs about 250 yards or something to beat his yardage record.
I don't know what his yardage record is. I know it's
like
I know the touched.
It's 11 or 1200. I don't think he's gonna. Yeah, I don't think he's gonna.
That's a lot.
I think he has to average over 100 yards a game, which seems.
I have my Laporta cheat sheet inside up on my whiteboard.
Yeah.
Because I've been tracking all that stuff. He's less than 100. Like he's what's he at 7? Jeez. Yeah. All right. I don't want to start throwing numbers out that are not right. He's close enough where he's going to. He's already got touchdown.
Yep.
Okay. He's only like he's less than 50. I know that. So it's less than 50 yards away from breaking the yardage for tight ends, Lions tight ends, all of them.
Lions tight ends, yeah.
Yep. And then he's like 11 or 12 catches away from breaking the Lions reception mark.
Yeah.
So
From
it's very possible
receiver.
for any tight end. He could triple crown the Lions tight end history by the end of the season, because he's gonna get the 50 yards. It's a matter of, can he get 12 catches in 3 games?
Right.
He's been averaging like 4 to 4.5, and so it seems really possible. So he could be, by the end of the season, this could be the greatest season that a Lions tight end has ever had.
I mean, he arguably already has, but yes.
Sure.
Yeah. It'd be tough for him. So chat says Dick is at 1076 in terms of yardage.
Ooh, he'd need
almost 100
about 100 a game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
maybe
even as great as he was last week, like he only had like 65 or something like that, right? Like it wasn't but he had like 5 catches, right? And there are 3 touchdowns on 5 catches. So it's more about when and how he catches things than as far as like pure yardage. I don't think we're going to see another 140-yard game out of him. On the flip side, though, the other rookie, I don't think there's a ceiling for him right now. Like
for
the
Gibbs?
way like I know he's only gone over like 100 rushing yards against the Raiders or something like that, where he went like for like 140 or something like that.
And he had 100 yesterday or Saturday.
Oh, exactly 100. Yep. That's right. I'm like wondering if he's like gonna hit between like 80 and 100 on like the regular, like if that's just going to be his thing as a co-back, right?
Right. Yeah, he only had 11 carries on Saturday and hit 100.
It's lunacy.
Yeah.
I don't even know what their yardage is. The two backs.
I think.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Wait, it should work for me too now. I'm on an Apple. What? Oh man.
Oh, maybe we both can't do it.
Whatever. Screw my computer.
But I think 1,000 yards for each back is kind of nuts, but also kind of realistic.
Yeah.
Right? Like, am I? I don't think I'm going out on a limb.
I don't know if realistic is right, but they'd both have to, I think, get around 80 yards a game remaining, which is possible, certainly, but they're not. The problem is the defenses that they're facing, right? You got 3 games left against 3 good defenses. 2 good defenses, obviously. Good, but...
All right. Montgomery would need to average 48 yards a game.
Okay, that's not that bad.
Over the last 3. He's at 855.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah.
Gibbs would need to average 74. No, not even 74. 73, essentially. No, well, he needs... Geez, I can't do the math quick out of my head.
Either way...
No, it's actually not even 70. It's like 70 yards. Mm-hmm. So if Montgomery does 50 and Gibbs does 70...
He's at what, 790?
Ball game. 792, yeah. So,
70
yards a game on the ground for Gibbs.
But you're talking about a collective of at least 130 rushing yards between the two per game, which is a lot against the Vikings, the Cowboys, and the Vikings.
Just do it. Just take care of business this weekend.
Just do it
this weekend.
Just do it all this weekend. Just rush. Each guy rush for 200 yards this weekend. That's all you're asking.
Look. This Denver defense was no joke.
No,
we talked about it.
They weren't a good run defense. They weren't. Erik.
No, I agree. I'm agreeing with you. Agreeing with you. They were a very good defense, though. But the run part was very susceptible. That's true.
Let me go on through some of these other alerts real quick. Painmaker, thank you for the 44 months. Terra DC, 12 months, full year. Says with a bunch of players going off IR, who do you think the Lions will miss? I don't know why all my alerts keep getting cut off. I'm assuming you're asking who the Lions are going to cut, and I'm not sure we want to discuss that. Erik and I have had a conversation behind the scenes, wondering if this is an ethical thing to
Yeah.
talk about. Um, because you're speculating on people losing their job, which is, it's obviously a conversation the Lions have to have, right? It's something that they're making these decisions now, but I don't know. There's something that feels a bit icky about talking about it. I know we talked about it a little bit on the Madden Sim, but I don't know. The best way that I think we can put it is like check the weekly inactives, right? Like the guys that aren't on the roster on a weekly on game days. Like those are your most likely candidates right there.
Yeah, it's I think Patterson was one that people had kind of tabbed
Yeah.
once Badgley had been active or elevated from the practice squad. It kind of made sense that maybe Patterson would be vulnerable if the job was going to go to Badgley, which it's going to be, right?
Yep.
And then there are probably a few other guys that are on the roster that maybe are on short contracts or non-expensive or don't have a lot of guarantees, and then they're good players, but they're just not. There's no room for them right now because of the health
Yep.
of the team, and so then they could be vulnerable. And so everything gets tricky, right? Because it's a delicate balance, and for us to speculate, for us to speculate, I'd hate to be wrong. Like, I'd hate to be like,
Yeah.
I think they're going to cut Teddy Bridgewater, and then have to go into the locker room and Teddy be like, "Yo, Erik, what's up?" And I'm still here. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's a conversation that I don't need to have. You know
Right.
what I mean? And I don't want to have it because it stinks to see people not sticking around with the team,
Yeah.
especially when you've been on the roster or you've been with the team for so
Right.
long, and then right when it counts to not be able to
Right.
stick it'd be hard. It's gotta be really hard to deal with, right?
And that, I think that's one of the important parts to highlight too. Like this team is just about to enter a really fun part of the season, a really important part of the season, and for these, the guys that are going to get cut are likely guys that have been around all season and have a very good chance of missing out on that part of the season, where the culmination of months and months and months and months of work. And so I think it's important to highlight that. Like this isn't just getting cut and being part of the business. This is being part of an organization, being part of a turning of the corner, being part of something special building in Detroit. And then when it's all about to pay off, when we're entering January football, you're gone. And that's just like I can't even imagine what's that like. And listen, like I'm not offended by anyone asking the questions. It's natural to be curious about this sort of thing. I have to imagine the guys in the locker room know what's coming too. Like, and they're probably, I'm sure the coaching staff is telling them not to think about it, but I'm sure some of the guys on the bubble are like, what do I do here? It's just, it feels a little bit crass knowing that this is going to be absolutely awful for 4 or 5 people in about a couple weeks here.
Yeah. And to was it Tara that asked?
Yeah.
I get this question multiple times a day.
Yeah.
This isn't an anomaly question. This happens frequently enough that we were talking about it earlier today. Like, so
don't feel bad asking.
No. This is very common. I have a story, real fast.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I took physics 2. And you take physics 2 because at the end of the year, you do a trip where you go to Cedar Point and you do physics of roller coasters, and you basically just spend the whole school day at Cedar Point.
Right.
It's fantastic. It's the whole reason you take physics 2, right? Like there's no real other reason. And so I'm in physics 2, and I'm, grinding out this, it's not always the most exciting, but I'm grinding it through it. And then and then we go into the like I'm like 3/4 of the way through, and that's when track season starts. And so now so I was on the track team, and this is my senior year, and I'm eyeballing that trip to Cedar Point to have a fun day, and then I qualify for regionals, and regionals is happened to fall on the same day as the Cedar Point trip, and so so at the last minute I ended up working towards this thing for almost a whole year, only to have it swept out from under me. So I imagine it'd be worse feeling than that, but similar. Like, you know what
Maybe.
I'm saying? Like,
But you
for a
earned something
parallel.
else. Instead of getting fired, you
Well,
earned
yeah.
regionals.
But but that's the point is that I missed the trip. I didn't get to go to my reward, and that's what's there, right? Like that's what's waiting. And so
This
I can
this
look.
this
We can
seems
hope
like
that any guy,
an analogy that
any
pales in comparison.
well, no, certainly, but I'm just saying it's similar. And so it's definitely not as important as their situation. But I I I I've lost my train of thought now
Sorry.
because I've but oh, I was just gonna say I hope that like any player that doesn't make it through,
Yeah.
that there's a practice squad spot waiting for them. You know what I mean? Like, because elevations are still a thing and there's still ways to contribute. And like they've said all year, every guy that is on this team,
Yeah.
whether it's practice squad, veteran squad, all that stuff, they all contribute in some way.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's also the problem though. Is like your practice squad. If you want to open a practice squad spot for one of these guys, it means cutting a practice squad spot, and in a lot of ways, those guys are important too. You might not see them on the field every day, but I mean, I feel like every year Dan Campbell has said something about like, listen, I tell every single person on the practice squad, get ready because if you perform, I mean, he hasn't shied away from that. If you perform on the practice squad, you're going to get a bump up. It happened to Kindle. It happened to Kindle this year. It happened to James Houston last year. If you ball out, you're going to get a shot, and sometimes injury is going to force you to have a shot. I mean, one of the unfortunate truths, and I've said this a couple times before, is some of these roster spots may have a way of working themselves out by injury. You hate to say it, but like, yeah. I mean, let's be honest. We don't really know the severity of a couple injuries out there right now. We don't know the severity of Brock Wright's injury. We don't know the severity of Jerry Jacobs' injury. Neither of those guys were able to come back after being injured, and they didn't practice today. So, could they be IR candidates? I don't know. Like maybe. I'm not saying no. And if that happens, what do you do if Brock Wright's out? Is that Kabinda's roster spot? Does Kabinda get activated at all? That was another, I don't know. Someone asked that question, and I don't really have a good answer for that one. If Brock Wright's injury is serious, I would say there's a chance. If he's not, I don't understand. Like I don't think with how tight the roster is right now that you have room for Jason Kabinda.
They love what he can do.
They do.
And they really like what he does on special teams. And so if Brock Wright is not hurt, if he's going to be able to go, then you have to consider other spots.
Yeah.
Where you have that are, if he's coming back primarily for special teams, what other special teams guy might be vulnerable? And I don't have an answer to that. And I don't think and there's certain guys that I think that they're not going to cut because they're so valuable in special teams,
Chet's right though.
But I don't know.
Kabinda is our greatest
tough,
emote. The Kabinda emote is fantastic.
But yeah, I don't know. I there's a lot of 1-for-1s where it's like, hey, this player at this position comes in, this player at this position could be vulnerable. Like there's some of those that you can put parallels with, excuse me. And Kabinda is such a unique person
Yeah.
and what he does, that there's not any, they'd have to change something beyond just finding a spot for him,
Yeah.
because it's not like one for one anywhere.
I think what people have to realize, because I think a common question is like, well, if he doesn't have a spot on the roster, why would you start his clock? Like, that seems dumb. I think the answer is they want to be prepared, right?
Yeah,
They want to get Kabinda up to football shape in
sure.
these 3 weeks. So by the end of that evaluation period, if there is a roster spot, if there is an injured player, boom, you can fill him right in. He's ready to go. And that's important, right? Like, you don't, if you're kind of sitting on your hands with Kabinda and you're saying, well, let's just keep him on IR until we need him. Well, then, I mean, he hasn't played since what, week 3? He's not going to be ready. He can't practice until week. It's already week 5. Jeez. Whatever. And that's what, 2 months now of not playing football. So you start his clock. When you get to the playoffs, you make your decision there. 3 weeks. Playoffs are 3 weeks away, Eric. If the Lions make it,
about it,
they're only like 99%.
Yeah, well, I so I quote tweeted one of our updates, and was like, one of our playoff updates, and was like, basically, if the Lions win out, the 2 seed is in play. And a lot of people were like, oh, it's good, it's good, it's good. And then there's always got to be that
The
one
jinx
person
guy.
that's like, oh yeah, but if they lose out, then they could also miss the playoffs. And I'm like, yeah, if like 18 other things go wrong, yes. I mean, but like they need like 7 or 8 things to go wrong. And like,
Yeah. Well, okay, so I don't know if this is the only way they miss out, but it's the most obvious way they miss out. And listen, I'm going to preface this by saying each individual one of these is certainly possible. All of them together doesn't seem very possible. Lions lose out.
it's like a parlay.
It's a 4-way parlay. Lions lose out. Vikings win out.
It's only 4?
Well, yeah, if you count these as 2. So Lions win out. I mean, that's technically 3 already. Vikings win out. That's another 3, but technically 2. Rams win out. And Seahawks win out. If those 4 things happen, I'm fairly certain the Lions would be out. But how likely is that? Now, I will say the Seahawks schedule is pretty easy. They're oddly playing 2 AFC teams in these last 3 weeks. The Rams, though, have the 49ers, but there's a small chance that the 49ers would have everything wrapped up week 17 or week 18. And so, like, you can play mental gymnastics and then suddenly be concerned about this, but all 4 of those things happening in succession just to screw the Lions. And I know everyone's first reaction is like, yeah, that would be the most Lions thing ever. No, it's not going to happen. I do think the Rams are going to win tomorrow, unfortunately. I'd love to see them lose, because they might be out of the playoffs if they lose that game. I don't think they will, though.
The percentage on, if they win, they have like a 60% chance of making it, and if they lose, it's like 18 or something like ridiculous like that. Like, it's like, whoa.
Okay, I'll stop talking. We'll check under. Ask what's the chances of the 1 seed. It's 1%. It, like, every model has them at 1% or lower, because
San Fran had to lose twice.
San Fran has to lose twice, and again, possible, because they play the Ravens this week, and they play the Rams. In week 18, they could lose both of the game. I don't remember the game in between it. Maybe like the Commanders or like some meh team.
I think the 2 is realistic, though, because if you
win
walk
out
into Dallas and you beat them,
yeah, it's over. Like, well, it's not over. They got to beat Minnesota twice, but
yeah, but like, that's, I mean, like, it's within reach.
Yeah,
right. Like, that's
sure.
That's there. Now, it's gonna be a tough game, because Dallas at home versus Dallas on the road is like 2 different Dallases, right? Sure. But if you can walk in and beat Dallas and put them, then all of a sudden you have home field for the first couple of rounds there. a huge advantage, especially the way Ford Field is right now. Ford Field is off its rocker, man. It's fun.
It is. Duck line, Old Wolf already answered that you're there, but yeah, a tie would mean that the Lions win if they tie the Vikings.
Correct.
They still get in. All right, let me get through.
A Rams tie clinches them a playoff seat too. By the way,
I hate talking about ties.
What?
So
it could happen.
They could, but they're not going to. All right, let me get through the rest of these alerts. We'll answer one or two more questions during break, and then we'll jump back into the show here. Brad Holmes' Bulge, who I've now been interacting a little bit with on Twitter. 8 months subscribed to the channel, says, remember when Hockenson got traded and said, it's nice to be in a place. Again, it's cut off there, but it's nice to be in a place where winning is expected or whatever.
Whoops.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought the blowback for that comment was
warranted.
Not warranted at all, because
warranted? That's what you were going to say.
The Lions were like 9-25-1 with Hockenson in town.
Wait, what? 9-25-1?
Something like that.
The other way? You mean like they've only won 9? Oh,
under Hockenson, with Hockenson in Detroit, they won that was their record.
Oh, sorry. I was anticipating one thing that you were saying. Didn't realize you were talking about another.
Yeah. But whatever. Lions fans can get defensive. It's fine. I didn't take that as that much of a dig, especially when it was considerably true.
I did. Yeah, I was furious.
You're a salty little bitch.
Wow.
Sorry. The air is different here, I
guess.
I may have had a couple sangrias before we went live.
A little salty where you are, I guess.
Kneecapper21, 10 months subscribed to the channel, said watching sloppy Matt Patricia get burned made my day.
So, how many people knew that was going to happen? Right?
I was thoroughly hoping it would happen, because I know there were some people that really wanted the Lions to clinch that night. I wasn't one of them. I enjoyed that finish just about as much as anyone could. And I also enjoyed raking in the page views for the next day when I wrote that article about everyone hating Matt Patricia. Maybe I think it's our second highest viewed page in December so far.
It was, my goodness.
But actually, Erik, Matt Patricia's actually played. I mean, they only gave up 17 points.
What a stupid play call! It's just everything was stupid about that last. You have a defense that thrives in zone, so you put them in man in critical situations in which you should be in zone.
Yeah.
And then they need a touchdown, so you don't play passive. You play in man up, and then it's 3rd and 10. You've already given up 1 3rd and 10, so now it's 3rd and 10 again. And so what do? You guard the sticks with everybody, put one safety in single high, and then you put the fastest guy, just let him run a solo, and then just let the backup quarterback YOLO ball, which is absolutely going to be caught against the Matt Patricia defense. And so it was just stupid. That ball, he threw that ball, and I said to Laura, that ball was in the air, and I went, touchdown. I'm like, it's a touchdown. It's gonna happen.
Hoping it's a touchdown.
No. I knew it. As you study this man and his defense as much as I did. You knew that ball was open, and all the receiver had to do was go get it.
You didn't know Drew Lock was gonna throw that. Almost
no, but when the ball was thrown, I knew look, JSN's good. I'm like, he's got it.
It was a hell of a catch for him.
JSN's great. I mean, there's a reason he went so high, right?
Yeah.
He's a really good receiver. They have a wealth of talent in their receiver room.
Yeah.
There.
Grandpa.
Yeah. What a terrible play.
5 months subscribed to the channel. Grandpa QB says, "Why are we trying out more cornerbacks to yesterday? Any news on bets?" Nope, nothing new on the guys that the Lions worked out yesterday. I think they're probably just keeping their Rolodex up to date. Although the reason I wrote about it, other than the fact that I think people would be interested in the CFL Defensive Player of the Year visiting, the Lions actually don't have a lot of visits throughout the year. I've been looking at like the visits, what do you call it? Sheet that they give out daily.
Transaction wire.
Transaction wire.
Yeah, the transaction.
And the lines are rarely on it. Like rarely. I feel like during the Matt Patricia era, it was like 4 people every week. They were just like running them in and out, and that became kind of a staple of what they did under Bob Quinn, which was like churn the bottom of the roster all the time. They don't do that here. They really only go hunting when either someone intriguing is on the wire or injury might be an issue. So when I saw that news, my first inclination was maybe Jerry Jacobs' injury is more serious, and maybe Kindle Vildor, who went out temporarily with an ankle or something. Maybe his was lingering. Vildor wasn't on the injury report today, so that's the good news. We'll see on Jerry. I don't know. It's hard to know.
It's just cramping.
Cramping?
Yeah, with a hamstring, with that. I said, yeah, I think Vilder was cramping. I think Jerry with a hamstring. Those soft tissues can be funky, man, and so like a hamstring injury can take you out for a while, or you can be fine. It's kind of, they're quirky.
Yep. I mean, hamstring took out Justin Jefferson for 2 months.
He is not on their injury report anymore, FYI.
Oh, I didn't see their injury report today. Anything interesting?
I know. Yeah. Here, I got some notes jotted
what
down.
What did I
say? Hunter is injured or is ill. Daniel Hunter is ill.
Daniel.
No, Daniel. They have Harrison Phillips, their nose is didn't practice. Jonathan Bullard, their starting defensive end, was limited. Then I said Hunter was out because of being ill. Murphy didn't practice, their starting corner. So they got a handful of guys on their starting defense that weren't in there. Ryan O'Neal, the right tackle, didn't practice as well.
He missed last week, right?
And then he did.
Yeah.
And so, so if he doesn't play, that's an advantage there. Matson also didn't play practice, but it seemed like they're turning the ball over to Ty Montgomery anyways. Right. He's going to be their new starter, from what it sounds like. Chandler. Ty Chandler. Yeah, I know. I get them mixed up in my head. I've been making little, like, going back into the memory bank and making these tiny little, like, references that just are not right.
Yeah. I mean, you're getting old.
For whatever reason. Like,
you're getting old.
Well, I know, but I know the info's in there. I'm just pulling it out at weird times.
All right, last 2 alerts here. Clark Atog, thank you for the 4 months subscribed to the channel here on Twitch, and Chimmy Chim 3 months subscribed to the channel. A couple of you requested Zazu cameos, and unless my good friend Harry is in the chat and wants to send me videos of Zazu, I do not have Zazu with me. Jeremy likes to wear a wrist Rolodex. Does someone? I said Rolodex, and then someone in the chat said Rolodex. I'm not sure if you don't know what a Rolodex is, or if I said it weird, but either way, Google it.
I used to have one of those back when I thought they were necessary.
RGA asks, thoughts on the new cornerback Dre Bly, Erik?
Very good. I really like Dre. I probably shouldn't. No, I'm gonna. Never mind. I'm not gonna say it.
Oh boy, he's in the chat.
I have a nice heartfelt story, but I don't know if I should if I'm allowed to say it. Okay. But let me just say this: Dre Bly is a very good coach, very good person, and his interaction with his players is very heartfelt, and I think he has that ability to treat them like people and not just like players that you need. They're not like chess pieces, like some former coaches we've seen. And he did something over Thanksgiving for the players that I thought was pretty cool. Just basically, like, there for some of the younger players, there's not a lot of opportunities for them to spend Thanksgiving with their family because they're new to the city, their families live in different town, right? And so like he had some plans for those guys to make sure that the some of those guys were taken care of, which was I thought really smart,
Very
really
thoughtful.
wise, really very thoughtful. And so I don't want to give too much away beyond that though. But
Yeah.
he's every story I hear about Dre is pretty impressive.
And I'm sure he takes some of that from his playing experience here, right? Like he's
Sure,
played on Thanksgiving
sure.
before. He's probably seen firsthand some people like go home to their apartment on Thanksgiving and not do anything after the game. So that's
Yeah.
super smart.
Because I one of the things I did the week before Thanksgiving was I went around and asked a lot of the new faces what it was like to if they were excited to play on Thanksgiving, what they were expecting, and then like what were they doing like
Yeah.
after. And there was a few of them that were like, "Oh, Dre's got some plans for it,"
Yeah.
and I thought that was pretty cool.
That's great. Um, I am 100%, or am I 100? I'm 100. I'm also not in Minnesota now. All right, I think it's probably about time to get back into it.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh man,
then we will. All right,
gotta
give
get
us.
the creeks out. All my
Yo, man,
oldness.
I got a rolly chair, which is fun. It's hard for me to stay still when I got a rolly chair. Should I do the Chris Collinsworth slide in for the second segment?
I've done that on the stream before.
I can't control it. It's too small.
You know what's interesting though is that we have rolly chairs at Ford Field, and I don't see you fidgeting around ever
Well, I can't.
in that rolly
I
chair.
can't in the seat I was last time because they had tape on the floor because there was a cord running underneath, and
Mm-hmm.
so I kept like bumping into the cord. It was very first world problemy complaint here. Like every time I try to adjust my chair, it's always getting stuck in the cord that's taped to the.
Mm.
It's very annoying. If you've ever had your chair stuck on a cord, it's annoying.
I was just saying in general. I think you stay pretty good and not you don't fidget around too much.
Well,
Um,
I got an aggressive forward lean during the game, like really
yeah,
aggressively leaning into the action.
and then you have a nice overhand right when they score,
What do you
which
mean?
is nice as well. Like,
And it's definitely that's not a is that an overhand? It's just a jab.
okay, all right. I spin in my chair a lot. I feel like
Oh, do you?
I'm a little fidgety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a fidgety person in general, but I don't know. All right.
I don't think anyone would have guessed that.
Is anyone relating to this material at all? No?
No, sorry.
Great. Welcome back to the midweek mailbag. Week 16 already, Eric. As we head
Woo.
towards Minnesota. Lions 10-4, Vikings 7-7. But let's get back to some questions here. Let's get to this one from Tim Bowers at Tim1213. Asks, if the Lions are set in stone with the third seed going into week 18, how much do you think Teddy and or Hendon Hooker would play? Obviously, Decker and Ragnow wouldn't play in that scenario either. Anyone else that you would think not play in that scenario?
I think they would all play until the third quarter. And then after the third, like when we get to the fourth quarter, then, or maybe the half,
Yeah.
we might see Teddy come out of the half.
Right.
But I think a lot of them are going to play in week 18, whether it's sewn up or not. They're creatures of habit, and Dan doesn't want to back off. I don't think he's going to want to risk injury too much, but
Right.
at the same time, I don't think he's going to want to play. He doesn't do anything scared, right?
Right.
Like he doesn't coach scared, right? So I think he's going to go in, play his guys, and want to win the game. And so, could there be a guy like Frank who maybe doesn't play the final quarter? Yeah, Decker too, sure. Like older veterans, but you better be winning, right? Like if you're not winning, they're not coming out, right? But yeah,
Well,
I I
I
don't
would
expect them to play a lot of their backups until the very, very end.
I would say that there's a small chance that someone like Decker doesn't play. I'm not. I mean Ragnow. Decker's fine. Decker was full practice today, right? Like he's fine.
Yep. Yep.
I think you might give Ragnow a day off. Like it to me, if
Mm.
there's any injury concern at all, or if you have a veteran that needs the rest to heal up from an injury, that's the one exception I think Dan Campbell would make. But Dan also said this week when someone asked a similar question, like these guys will get the rest after the season is over, and I'll give them plenty of rest then. And so yeah, even with nothing on the line, I think Dan is going to at least play everyone healthy enough for a half. You might get an excused absence if you have 3 injuries like Frank Ragnow has had all season. Otherwise, though, I'm with you. I think they play all their guys and maybe for the entire game. All right, let's go back to the secondary really quick. Comeback Trapper at Paul Chattel asks, "Is Jerry Jacobs relegated to special teams only now?"
Oof. I don't think we can definitively say yes because he can always win that job back.
Sure.
Because they're very performance based on what you do in practice. At the same time, the decision to remove him from the starting lineup, I think, speaks to the fact that they won't make that decision lightly,
Yeah.
right? So it's very possible that he'd have to really earn it, you know what I mean, in order to get back in. So I'm not going to say no, but it seems like they took 2 other guys
Yeah.
and played both of those other guys over him.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, and first of all, he is injured now, and we'll see how long that lasts. He's dealing with with an injury that made him miss practice today, so not even trending towards playing at all today. But I will say I'm tending to think this is more than this is intended on being a permanent change, and maybe not going into next year or whatever. He can always win it back then, but it was interesting because after Dan Campbell was asked about it after the Denver game, the way he like turned it on its side and said, well, like we kind of view it as earning Jerry Jacobs as a special teamer because he's a really good gunner and he can do this and he can do that on special teams. And so, some of that is probably trying to soften the blow of benching a player, but I think some of that is earnest. I think they do like Jerry Jacobs in that role and almost view it as adding an extra player on teams that can help them. But that also tells me that, like, yeah, that's where they want him right now. They want him on special teams. They don't want him on defense.
Yeah.
All right. Next question here comes from Kyle Clerk. Asks, with how the offense as a whole looked while Ragnow was out, is he the offensive MVP? Considering how injured they have been at times on the offensive line, what kind of draft resources do you think they spend in the upcoming draft? So let's start with that. Is Ragnow the offensive MVP now that we've seen him in and out of the lineup recently?
All right. So when we did our rankings of the Lions players 1 through 90,
yep,
my number 1 was Penei Sewell and my number 2 was Frank Ragnow.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, you were pretty close to that
something
as
like
well.
That. Yeah.
I think you had Amon-Ra. You might have had Amon-Ra, but I don't think either of those guys got out of your top 3, right?
Correct.
So we've long said that Frank is a critical piece to this organization. Yeah. He is, in my opinion, I think you can make the argument Penei Sewell was one of the best, if not the best, offensive tackle in the league at the end of the season. Yeah. Frank Ragnow was in the conversation for top 3, maybe top 2, maybe even top 1 center in the like. You could have the top center and the top tackle in the NFL on this offensive line. I mean, that's one of the reasons why they're so good. So yes, I think Frank is sensational, and I believe he is, like I said, the second most important person on this entire roster, even more important than everybody, right? Yeah. Like it's those 2 guys. As far as do you need to make plans to replace him? I don't think you do. Not right now. Now, a couple reasons. One, they have had a strategy of having a player that is capable of starting guard and center, that if Ragnow can't go for a game, then they can shift him over. It was Evan Brown previously. Now it's Graham.
Yep.
If you're planning on re-signing Graham, then you're okay. They also draft guys and cross train them and try and get them familiar with center as well. Almost all of their reserves have gotten shots at center to try and learn it. So will they have to draft his replacement? Yeah, but I don't think they're near that point in his career, hurt or not. Yes, he's dealing with a lot of injuries. Yes, the toe injury is going to linger, but this is the guy who came back less than 2 weeks after meniscus surgery. Yeah. This is a guy who broke his throat, fractured throat, and was like, I'll just play. It's cool. Doesn't impact me. I just can't make the calls at the line. He is. I don't like. Campbell said Gardner Johnson has these superhuman genes, but man, Ragnow, he's a different animal, man. Yeah. Ragnow's something else.
And it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people understandably look at the years that he's had and had to battle all these tough injuries, and he's shuffling his feet because of his toe injury, and now he's dealing with a back and a knee and whatever, and wonder, like, is this dude about to retire? Like, he's gone through so much. And I think this year is a testament to, like, no, like, he's clearly loves doing what he's doing right now, and he's willing to have surgery and hustle his way back onto the field to insinuate, like, no, like, this is what I want to do. Why would I? I mean, what was the quote from Campbell today? Like, he's terrified of letting his teammates down.
Yes. Yes. 100%.
To me, that doesn't scream, I'm ready to retire anytime soon.
He's 27 too. Like, that's the crazy part, is he's going to get another big contract before he retires. Like, I think he's got a half decade minimum in him right now.
Two things to add too. One, you have a crazy memory. I just pulled up the sheet, and indeed I had Panay, Amon-Ra, Frank as my 1, 2, 3, and you indeed did have Panay, Frank as your 1 and 2. Very strange to me that you remembered that. Second of all, I think the question was a little bit more all-encompassing with the offensive line. It says, considering how injured they have been at times on the line, what sort of resources? And I think a lot of this depends on what you do with Jonah. And the Jonah question is a tricky one, because you would have thought they would have had a deal done by now if they thought it was something urgent. They've had talks. We've heard that they've had talks. So there is obviously some mutual interest, but, like, I know you're not going to like what I'm about to say, and some people might also not like what I'm about to say, but this has not been Jonah's best year. I'm not going to say he's been bad, but I would argue he's been
a bad year. They have a down year.
Mm-hmm. It's certainly a bad year to have a down year. You're right. And to me, it's not like the injury stuff. Like, injury stuff happens. Everyone on the offensive line has gotten injured this year, so I don't think he's more injury prone than the guy next to him. But I just don't think he's been playing up to his standards this year. And so if the Lions think that's not worth it, that's not worth, maybe he's looking for top tier guard money, I would not be surprised to see them move on. And if that's the case, then suddenly you have a pretty big need on your draft board.
I think his game last week was one of his best. I thought they had a lot of success running the ball to the left, right?
Yeah.
They would go left, and Gibbs would get. I mean, Gibbs got chunk yardage everywhere, right? I mean, and Sewell's one of the best blocking line running right tackles. The PFF is throwing out so many numbers about him that are, like, insane to me. Like, they're like, oh, look, he's right now, these are the top 2 guards in the league. And it's like, Penei Sewell, 94, next best guy, 83. Right, and it's like, holy crap, that's a huge gap. Yeah. Right, yeah. And so, okay, so you can get chunk yards both ways, but when they went left, there was huge openings. Yeah. And so I do think Jonah is key on that. And when Jonah's right, he has movement that some of the other guys don't, or like some of the other interior players don't, right? Yeah. And so, like, he can move ways Graham can't. And so there's a high ceiling for him. but he definitely is on a down year. And I think injuries played into that. And I think coming back from injuries played into that. He was injured last year as well, which isn't going to help his case. And so for the line, if he's going in saying, I want top tier money, and I can easily see the Lions saying, look, you have missed this many games
Right.
over the last 2 seasons. That has to knock your price tag down. And I would think they're completely justified in doing so. My concern would be if he tests the market, if some teams might be willing to overlook that and then you lose them, right?
Yeah.
At the same, so that's my kind of gut right now is I think the Lions want him back and the Lions are willing to pay him, but they're also not going to want to pay him at that elite tier because of his injury history. And so that could be a hiccup.
Yeah.
And so I'm less confident now that they're going to get him re-signed than I was at the beginning of the season. And so, and I think the injuries really play a factor into that, knowing how the Lions approach that, knowing how he's going to want to approach his next paycheck.
All right, next question here comes from Dad Gamer, real_dad_gamer, asks, does James Mitchell have a role on this team going forward? And I think James Mitchell is kind of in a fascinating situation right now because we haven't seen a lot of him. He's usually averaging, somewhere between 5 and 10 snaps a game. And now you have an injury.
It's not a lot.
Yeah, now you have an injury to Brock Wright. And the question is, one, how serious is that? We don't really know yet. Didn't practice today on Wednesday. But can he be a 1-for-1 replacement? Or do they bump up Sam Laporta from 80% of the snaps to 95% of the snaps, which is essentially what they did last game? I'm curious what you think about that because James Mitchell is a guy that I think we were all waiting to break out, and then suddenly they're like, no, Brock Wright's a lot better. You can just take a seat there, James Mitchell, and maybe in a year or two we'll see if you're ready.
So James has been a guy who's always stepped up when his number has been called, and because of the way that they've played with Laporta breaking out and then Brock being that reliable too, they haven't really needed to lean on him a lot. He's also, I think, still in his developmental stage. Yeah. Remember, the ACL cost him a lot of training last year, and so he was still kind of learning on the job, and so now he's getting into that point. But fun fact about James Mitchell, every pass that's been thrown his way, he's caught. He is 11 for 11 on receptions over his career, and his touchdown that he caught happened to be in Week 9 last year against Green Bay, which was the catalyst game that turned the tide for what this organization is. So
everything to James Mitchell.
I do think James Mitchell is. I mean, they won on that touchdown. It was the only touchdown that scored.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I do think James Mitchell is a guy that there is a plan for him. I see him more on the Derek Barnes path, though, than like the Sam Laporta path.
Right.
Right? So he's a guy that they're taking their time with because they can afford to. But I also think if he needs to be tight end 2 this week, I think he'll be all right. Yeah. I do also think Laporta will get his 95% of the snaps.
No, I think
as well.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think we'll see some extra James Mitchell this week, assuming that Brock Wright doesn't play. And I'm not going to tell you he's going to be good or bad, but I think this is going to be a great opportunity for him, right? This is going to be an opportunity to show that he's grown in the year and change that he's been healthy since he landed here. So that's kind of a wait and see for me, but kind of like, if this were a preseason game and we do our 10 things to watch, I'd say James Mitchell is one of those 10 things to watch to see how he does in his limited snaps this week. But obviously there's bigger fish to fry when you're, the division's on the line, all that sort of stuff. All right, last thing before we go, question here from Between the Numbers. Anthony always asks us some great questions. This one is about Jared Goff, but a nice one. Is Jared Goff's new superpower resiliency? And is this the ideal superpower of Dan Campbell's quarterbacks? List examples: touchdowns after turnovers, big game after a 3-game lull, overcoming the LA trade. I'm going to answer this one first, and I'll use the spaceman meme of it always has been. And I think this front office has always said that too. Like, the reason they love Jared Goff is because of that resiliency, because he went through some tough times in LA and has always stayed steady. And you ask his teammates, how does Jared Goff look like after a loss? How does he look like after a win? They'll tell you it's the exact same. This is a guy who, again, like we talk about the ups and downs of the season. He's a guy that's just like straight the entire time. And I can attest to that too. Like when we talk to him in the media, he doesn't feel like he's any different after a win than he does after a loss. Now, he might get annoyed by some of the questions that he gets asked after a loss compared to asked after a win. But in general, his demeanor does not seem to change. I mean, you look at him on the sideline when they cut to him on the sideline. Does he ever look furious or thrilled in the middle of a game? No, he's just like, he's locked in, he's loaded. And yes, I would say absolutely that's one of his best traits, if not his superpower, is when the turbulence comes, he's steady as a mouse. That's not a thing. Steady is something that's steady. I don't know. The mouse is definitely not steady.
It's a thing. It's a thing now. One of the most impressive things I've ever seen Jared Goff do was before he even joined the Lions, was his last season in LA when he broke his right hand, his throwing hand.
Yeah.
And couldn't play. And then his backup was injured and got injured in the playoffs.
Yep.
And they had to turn to him a week after having surgery on his throwing hand. And he went in and slung it. And he looked great, way better than I thought he would ever. That was so impressive to me when he did that. I had a completely different view on what I thought of Jared Goff when that happened. And so when he got traded, like, I was like, all right, this dude is pretty tough. Like, that's like an underrated thing about him, is like, everybody. So we've seen him. I agree with everything you said. And I'm with you. I do think he's very resilient. And I think the team is able to bounce back from wins because of that resiliency and because of that steadiness, right? That's why they haven't lost 2 games in a row, right?
Yeah.
Like, so he's got a lot of things that I think fly under the radar that work for him. And resiliency is certainly one of the things that I think doesn't get talked about enough.
No question. All right. I think we're going to wrap things up there, Erik. If you guys like this content and want more of it, join us for the live show. We do this mostly every week. I was going to say every week, but that'd be technically a lie. Mostly every week. Join us on youtube.com/@Pride of Detroit. Set up the alerts so that you get us live. If you don't like YouTube, go over to Twitch. Twitch is nice and hip, and we love our community there too. It's twitch.tv/Pride of Detroit. We spend extra time before the show, not before the show, in the middle of the show, after the show, to answer some extra questions. We have a lot of fun. It's like a 2-hour shindig, so you're only getting a little piece of that. We appreciate you just as much, to be clear, but you're missing out on some extra content. So, for Erik, I'm Jeremy. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. However you're consuming this, we thank you, and we'll see you next time. It's Cast Be Kind.
Recording stopped.
You guys aren't going to see my mom. Stop asking.
Excuse me.
Twitch chat is steady as a mouse. That's right.
I'm trying to piece together how you even came up with that.
I don't know.
Collection of words.
Is there any idiom there? Steady as
they come. Like, you can, like,
that's not a thing.
I
don't know. Neither is steady as a mouse, but quiet as a mouse is obviously what I smushed together in my brain. We can't stay for long here. Mostly because I need a Pride of Detroit direct to submit, and I've done the written part. I believe Ryan submitted his written part. I have not done the video. I have not done the little links to watch at the end. So I have at least another hour of work to do there, and it's already 9:00. Wait, maybe. You don't know what time zone I'm
in. Excuse me. I should have muted myself there.
Steady as a rock. There you go. That's what I was. Tara's got it. That's a thing, right? Steady as a rock? Not steady as I rock. Solid as a rock. That's an Arrested Development reference.
Solid as a mouse.
Solid as a mouse.
Well. Someone said one of the reasons that James Mitchell wasn't playing as much is because he wasn't a good blocker. I agree that his run blocking, it needs some development, but his pass blocking is actually very good. So I think
they care more about run blocking. Let's be honest.
Well, for tight end too, yeah, but at the same time, if you can't pass block, you don't get on the field, right? Like everybody's got to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Especially against a team that can blitz 8, right?
It's true. Yeah, that's true. Maybe that's kind of an extra thing to keep an eye on. Like James Mitchell's going to get some extra reps. Is he going to be able to pick up those extra blitzers? He's going to have the mental to do it as someone that doesn't
put him on. Just put him at tight end, like don't drop him back at like the H back. Just put him at the standard thing and just let him take the outside guy.
But what if he doesn't know who is the outside guy?
Just keep moving until you hit the outside guy.
What if the outside guy is inside him though, and he's looking to the outside, and the guy runs right by him? It's not just the guy on the outside.
Huh? Like you can if you line up and you have Penei Sewell right here, you just have to look this way. Everything on that side is gonna be fine. Mm-hmm. Just look this way, and so you'll be all right. Just take that guy, or just take the guy Sewell tells you to take. Like that's fine.
All right, guys, I'll give you a hint as to where I am, even though most of you already actually know. I am in an area that is playing the Lions-Vikings game as the local Fox game.
Oh, nice. That's like 90% of the country.
That's right. But let's just say I am thrilled. Like I wasn't sure if that was going to happen or not, and I'm very excited that it is.
Yeah, you made it. So I was after almost getting run over by Sean Payton after the game last week in the locker room or in the hallway outside the locker room. I was talking to one of the national guys, and he was asking me if they. What's that?
Sorry, I'm responding to a tweet. Shane, if you're watching, you're ridiculous. But thank you.
So he said, "Are they going to potentially sign Amon-Ra like this offseason when he becomes eligible for it, mm-hmm. or are they just going to like try and wait out his rookie contract?" And I said, "Well, he's a pillar, so I do think because he's a pillar of what they built on, they're going to probably want to try and tie him up." And then I said, and they're going to want to go after Sewell as well, but what are they going to pay him? Like
Sewell or Amon-Ra?
Like Sewell. No, Sewell. Like, is it like Tropical Islands or Lear Jets?
I mean, it's gonna be over $20 million a year, right?
It's gonna be, yeah. Like, and then so part of me says, okay, with Sewell, you're actually a 5. You have an extra couple of years, right? But like, right. Or actually, I'm not even sure what his contract. I don't want to speak again. I don't want to speak out of turn when it comes to numbers here, but I'm wondering, like, God, he's gonna be very wealthy pretty soon. Go ahead. What are you giggling at there, buddy?
Chat's being ridiculous right now. Tactile, you're distracting me. Stop it. Yeah, he's gonna get paid a lot of money, and they're gonna happily write that check.
Yeah. So he's gonna have He's going to have the 5th-year option. That's what it is. So they don't
Right.
necessarily have to extend him if they don't want to, because that 5th-year option is going to be like 18 in 2025. So, but again, the way he is, I don't know. They may go.
I have an update.
Go ahead.
There's your Zazu cameo. There's my boy.
There's two of me. A reflection of me. He
There
looks
you go.
very excited.
Vildor or Dorsey? What is? Okay, yeah. Let's talk Vildor and Dorsey. I would like to go back and watch the tape, the all 22, and just focus on those guys because I'll be honest, I don't have a strong opinion versus one way or the other. I don't know if they're going to continue. I would assume they're probably going to continue to rotate them a little bit because I think they probably like what each of them can bring, and it's not completely the same what each of them bring. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think they're settled.
Yeah.
Which can be good and bad, right? Like the good news is that maybe you have options and you're developing two guys where you turn to either one if one of
Sure.
them's struggling. The bad side is if you can't decide which one's better, maybe neither of them are good enough, right? And that's the scary part. And then that's the part where you're like, you start looking at the offseason and saying, is corner their top priority? Like, we thought it was maybe like a defensive lineman. Maybe corner's a bigger priority. Like, I think it's either one. I think it's
Yeah.
defensive lineman or corner, right? I think
Yeah.
but I think I was leaning edge or D tackle, and now I'm starting to say, man, maybe it's corner. Maybe corner is where they have to hit.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Does it bother you at all that this is going to be the second straight year where those are arguably the two biggest needs?
No, because they try to attack them in different ways.
Try to
They
attack
had a
corner.
bunch
I
of
would argue
guys.
they did not try to tackle edge.
No, they had guys that they tried restructuring. Like,
Yeah.
I think if they would have cut Charles and Romeo instead of restructuring, you would have added a guy.
Right.
Right. But I think they said, okay, we can use these guys, get them at lower prices, see if they can reach their potential again. And I think Charles fell short. And I think Romeo is maybe never going to regain his form to be the Romeo that he once was.
Yeah.
And then at corner, they went out and signed Mosley, right? Like they and then he gets hurt. So I think both those kind of big swings that they decided to do, they just both didn't work,
Yeah.
right?
And Chet's there too. Like they probably would have drafted Witherspoon if he was there. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring it up. It's funny because like I got asked on the radio the other day. Is like, were you surprised that the Lions like went all in on offense early in the draft? I'm like, and we're ignoring the Campbell pick at that point, but I'm just like, no, I don't think there was like a conscious effort. Like I like that they looked at their good offensive skill players and were like, we can do better. I love that attitude. Yeah. Offense wins in this league. Like it just does. I know everyone says defense wins championships, but man, look at like the DVOA numbers of the top offensive teams and the top defensive teams, and tell me that the top offensive teams are not the best teams in football versus the top defensive teams. So I like the idea of saying, hey, we got these skill position players, let's make them even better. That's a great attitude to have. And so if the Lions want to go out and draft a first round receiver next year, great, do it. I don't care. I think that's a great move.
They'll have options.
But I would not say that they went into the draft thinking, let's upgrade our offense and that's it. Like that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go out and seek upgrading our offense. No, I think they just said, well, the one guy we really wanted to upgrade our defense with is gone. Let's go to plan B. Oh, Jahmyr Gibbs is still here. Let's get him and maybe something else. Let's trade back.
Yeah, I still think their plan in an ideal world was what they wanted to do was to get Witherspoon, then trade up and get Gibbs.
Yeah.
And then
I'm so glad they
or
didn't
maybe
do
they
that.
thought they could. Maybe they thought they could have got him there at 18. But yeah, like if you don't trade back, you have to give up either Laporta or Branch. Like that's so you'd have no Campbell and either no Laporta or no Branch, but you'd have Witherspoon instead. Like, so would you give up both Campbell and Branch for Witherspoon? Like that's I think what they were considering.
Right.
And that's not where they went. Obviously, and man, for team trade back, they sure got a boatload of positive picks out of it.
Yeah.
And
I can't be too mad at it.
So, but I agree with you. I don't think the plan was let's go offense heavy. I think they wanted to do. I think they kind of I think it was Witherspoon, and then they were going to hope to try and get Gibbs, and then I think they were probably targeting Laporta with that second, and then they acquired the other second round pick to get Branch and just kind of fell into it. So, yeah, I think you'd be missing Jack Campbell and Branch to get Witherspoon. That's an interesting trade to try and get the two, because like for me, Witherspoon was in my top like 3, but Branch was 12 for me overall. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So like it wasn't. I liked Witherspoon more, but I liked Branch a ton, and so I don't know.
It worked out in the end.
It ends up working out very well.
But
yes,
if Witherspoon hurts this team from Seattle.
So there's a scenario.
Uh-huh.
I know that we've talked about. I know people have talked about these scenarios like, oh, they could play. There's a scenario where they could play the Rams and the Eagles, right? There's actually a scenario where they could play another team as well if somebody bounces the 49ers in the first round.
Yeah.
Or not in the first opportunity, right? So where like they could play like Seattle or Green Bay and then get the Rams and then get the Eagles, and like if that like it's crazy. No, I'm just saying you could have the Packers or Seattle revenge game, then you could have the Jared Goff revenge game, and then you could have the Matt Patricia revenge game, and then by the time we get to the Super Bowl, we would be like just a pile of waste. Because we would be so exhausted from these massive storylines. We would have to be as steady as a mouse to get through that area, to get through that stretch. Right. Like it would have to be.
Okay. Yeah, you got your joke.
Can you imagine?
You gotta stop it.
No, but seriously, can you imagine if they there's so many storylines.
Yeah, I know, just line up and play football. I don't need all this pomp and circumstance. It's playoff football. You don't need extra drama for playoff football. This is the first home Lions game in 30 years. That's the drama I need. That's it. I don't need jilted quarterbacks and Kelly Stafford.
Oh God.
See, I got you on my side in a second.
There you go. I'm not saying that like they need the extra motivation, because they don't, right? Like they won't need it. But the media is going to latch on to something, right? And there's so many of those.
That's the bad part of it, is like if it's an away game, because I'll obviously be at the home games, and I might even go to the away games. But either way, like the broadcast is just going to be super annoying. I'd rather they sit there and talk football and X's and O's and schemes and things like that. Instead, it's going to be cuts to Kelly Stafford on the side. It's going to be cuts to Jared Goff and Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford and the Lions. And it's just like, no, just talk about the game. I don't need all this.
So if you want to know how dialed in this team is, in the locker room after the game, we're talking to Sam Laporta. And I know I was in the background of Woodyard's video, and everybody tagged me in it and was like, "There's Erik." But so he was asked a bunch of questions, and I just wanted to mention to him about breaking the touchdown record. So I waited for the scrum to be over, and everybody exited, and then I just said to him, "Did you know that your 3 touchdowns put you at 9 on the season?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Did you know that no tight end in Lions history has ever scored 9 touchdowns?" And I said, "So you're the record holder of that." And he looked at me and he went, "Oh." And that was it. That was it. He was like, "Oh." Like he could have cared. Like he was just like, "Yep, cool."
Right.
Like he was so like focused on like he just was like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Geez, oh Pete's this rookie." he's something. He's different. He's his ability to handle the media is very different than it was, when we first met him.
Yeah.
6 months ago, or right. He's gotten better at it.
He still doesn't love doing it. He kind of avoids doing it, but he's good at it. Yeah. He's fine.
Well, he's got a lot of good things going his way.
He sure does. All right, I'm going to get through some of these last alerts, and then we'll probably end stream pretty soon here. Okay. Again, because I have a lot of work to do tonight. Woodchuck under 100 bits. So your message got cut off. I'm sorry, I can't find the rest of it. It says Brad Holmes will look Jackson in the face and say, "Oh, the best ability is availability." Kemp James Kirk 10 bit says, "Are we going to watch Sights and Sounds?" No, I'm sorry. I spent like a good hour setting up the stream so that it wouldn't mess up. I don't know if I have the capabilities of doing that. And I know the stream hasn't been perfect. I've had some connectivity issues through the Zoom call. I imagine probably through the streaming software as well. It's probably not the greatest internet that I have right now. So no, sorry, you're going to have to watch it on your own. But I did. Who was mic'd up?
Bad internet in Alabama.
Yeah, that's right. Who was the Sights and Sound? I saw someone or the Lions tweet out who was mic'd up and I've forgotten already. But either way, no, we're not going to watch it.
Nope.
Captain James Kirk, another 100 bits says, "Crazy looking back at it, getting Witherspoon probably," I don't know what he said. It was Hutchinson, you're right. Nick the Greek, 39 months subscribed to the channel, and I do have your comment pulled up. And since it was a very Matt Patricia week, I am going to give you the floor and read your entire message, even though I'll probably regret it. Nick the Greek's 39-month subscription message says, "Matt Patricia's fourth quarter meltdown apparently occurred after he'd finished his 14th cheesesteak of the night and badly needed to use the restroom. Several play calls were misheard by the green dot due to awful water gas echoes in the background." There you go, Nick the Greek. 100 more bits from Nick the Greek, who says Jeremy looks like he's about to film an extremely low budget, and then the message got cut off. So I'll let you guys fill in the rest of that sentence however you think is appropriate. All right. I think it's probably time to get out of here. Thank you all for being patient with the technical issues. We will be back tomorrow. I have to remember what time that we booked our good friend Arif Hassan. I believe it was 8:30. I'm also going to join his podcast, but he doesn't stream that live, I don't believe. So yeah, 8:30 is when First Bite will be, which I know is inconvenient because it's going to be during Thursday Night Football, and I know you all are going to want to watch Thursday Night Football because it kind of matters, but we'll try to keep it relatively quick. We probably won't stay long afterwards so that we can get you out. We can go watch and see if the Lions clinch a playoff spot and all that sort of stuff. But 8:30 p.m. Eastern right here, twitch.tv/Pride of Detroit or youtube.com/Pride of Detroit. We'll break down Lions versus Vikings with one of our favorite guests ever. Anything left to say, Erik, before we get out of here?
No, I don't think Thursday matters as much. I think it'd be fun to watch, and it could be a fun little thing, but I think it'll be irrelevant come Sunday because Sunday will trump it.
Because the Seahawks are going to lose on Sunday, is that why?
No, because We're gonna see a 30-year drought end.
That'd be super nice. I wish they'd do it at home, but I also don't want them to wait till week 18 to do it. So
They're good on the road. So
can we just? Oh man, I was just gonna offer a very bad suggestion, which is like, hey, if the Lions do win on Sunday, can we all meet them at the airport and celebrate with them? But then I remembered that is New Year's Eve at an airport. Don't do that. Don't do that.
plus, are they coming home that night? Like, do you know? Like, and I assume a lot they would probably try to, right?
Yeah,
But
I would think so. But it would be cool. Like everyone in New Year, it's not feasible. Don't go to the airport if you're not actually traveling on Christmas Eve. It's already going to be enough of a madhouse. But it would be cool.
yeah, it's gonna be nuts.
Yeah. Is there somewhere where we can all convene though? Like in the next, I feel like there needs to be a collective celebration if the Lions win the division. Somewhere. What do we do?
Well, I mean, I have an idea, but I don't want
Did I say
to
New Year's
necessarily
Eve?
say it.
Christmas Eve? Whatever.
You did, but everyone knows.
Yeah.
We know. Um,
B-dubs. Let's all go to B-dubs. All right. Yeah. Whatever. All right, guys. We're gonna get out of here. Thanks again for all the support, the donations on YouTube, everyone on Twitch. Even if you're just here, love hanging out with you guys. Yeah, I don't know how to end it, but thank you guys. You're gonna see me slide over the screen, and then you're gonna suddenly see my streaming software, and it's gonna be awkward. Well, there's no other way I can do it, so that's how we're gonna end the stream. So we'll see you tomorrow, 8:30.